Appreciate y'all.
For those of you listening on the pod,
welcome into hour 2. Let's get into it, boys. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball, and we'll start with 11 versus nickel once again here. And I'll try to get it zoomed out enough where we can catch most of it. Jacob's out.
He lost the beard. Did he not pay the internet bill again?
Nah, you know how it is, man. He probably had the feds knocking at the door. You know how this goes. All right, so let's now move into – did I screw this up? Let me think here for a second. 12 base, we got that. I may have got the wrong screen grab. That's going to suck if that's the case. There's the nickel defense. We're good, right? Yeah. That's the nickel against their 11. All right, let's look at it here, Tim. So let's start with the offensive line. Same thing. Now, this is where it gets interesting because Detroit is stacked, according to PFF. From left to right, you've got Decker at left tackle, 77.2. Mahogany, 91.5, but an incomplete grade. Glasgow at a 57.2. Keep in mind their rookie. I'm trying to think of his name. I want to say he went to Georgia. You guys help me out. I'm drawing a blank in the chat.
Ratledge?
Tate Ratledge. I think you're right, Tim. It sounds like he's probably going to be the guy to start at center for the Detroit Lions. Okay. So anyway, right now they got Glasgow at 57.2. Regardless, even if it is Tate Ratledge, you got to prove your worth as a rookie, right? I think we all agree Tate Ratledge is not going to step in there and perform at the level of Ragnow, who just recently retired, right, because of injuries. So they're showing Ratledge at right guard. I think it'll probably be Ratledge's position to lose at center based on the fact that he's taken all the first team reps to the best of my knowledge throughout their mini camp. And then, of course, you got Penei Sewell there at right tackle with an 89.6. So, Tim, this offensive line, they look stout. There's no two ways about it. Without Ragnow, the weakness seems to be in the middle there now, right? And Mahogany, of course, having somewhat of an incomplete grade from last year. So when you look at our defensive front in our nickel 4-2-5, Rashawn Gary. Now, listen, they got Rashawn Gary on the right side. They don't have LVN in the starting lineup. That's crazy. He will be the starting edge. There's no doubt in my mind that that'll be the case. So you got Gary at a 73.0. Then you got Kenny Clark at that 60. Now, we now know battled a toe injury since week 1, had another foot injury on top of that as well. Devontae Wyatt took a little bit of a step forward last year.
Yep.
He's a good pass rusher, right? There's no doubt about that. It's just that run defense, can he sure that up playing 3 tech? So they still got Kenny playing that 2-eye, 1 tech look in the nickel 4-2-5. And, of course, Devontae Wyatt will be more of your 3 tech to 4 tech type thing. So they got Enigbari here at a 56.8. It will be LVN. And, again, LVN's PFF grade wasn't great if I remember correctly. But when you talk about what he did in the second half of the season, improving those numbers where he ended up finishing over an 11% pressure rate according to NFL Pro, I think we're going to be just fine. I think LVN's going to have a breakout year. And when I say breakout year, that doesn't mean he's going to go out and have 15 sacks. I think he's going to be upwards about 7 or 8 sacks, maybe 9 sacks. You're going to see that pressure rate stabilize somewhere between 10 and 13%. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets all the way up to 13% pressure. If you get Rashawn Gary back to the 15% mark, he had peaked at 19%. I think that your defensive front is going to come out and play a lot better. So their strength used to be their offensive line. It's still a strength, Tim, but you cannot overlook the fact that Mahogany's had limited snaps. And, of course, our boy, I've already forgot his name, their starting center that's gone, Ragnow, is obviously not in the lineup now. So there's some question marks in the middle of that offensive line now, Tim.
There is, and that's why we're going to get to find out real quick what kind of step Devontae Wyatt's taken in the run game. Bright and early week 1, I think, right? It's going to be, obviously Jahmyr Gibbs is proving to be kind of a premier tier back in the NFL. We can't deny that, right? But he's going to be running through a line that's got a couple of holes. Maybe holes isn't the word, but they're certainly on the ropes right now with an abrupt retirement. And then, you've got a rookie either at center or right guard. Of course, Penei Sewell is still a dog, and they got Mr. Laporta there at tight end who can block when he needs to. But I think it's going to be a testament to how well Half has got this defense ready for week 1. And I believe you're right. I think LVN's going to win that starting spot. I don't think JJ Enigbari is going to be the starter. And I think we're going to see a heavy dose of that bright and early. So, but I think the D line is Kenny Clark And Devontae Wyatt, these guys, this is going to be a pretty good test, nice and early, to see what we get from our front. And we know Detroit will run the ball, but they'll mix it up with check down Charlie there at quarterback and do a couple of passes and things like that too. So I'm looking forward to seeing those guys in the middle. Edge doesn't concern me as much as the middle of our D line does. Yeah. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
no, it does. It does completely. Listen, if Kenny Clark just returns somewhat back to his old form, and again, I'm not expecting Kenny to go out and be one of the top defensive tackles in the league. That's the tough part about his contract. He's paid like one of the best, and he just simply hasn't been the best since Mike Pettin left. Really, was when he was grading out somewhat elite. But with that being said, I do expect him to jump back up probably into the 70s. And also, they'll probably take a little bit of that touch spy away because teams are going to look at that when trying to play the Packers. I think they'll get away from that a little bit, get a little more aggressive up front in terms of the front four and not just having three guys rush with one kind of playing patty cake, watching the scramble and rush lanes. I think they'll improve, Tim. I do. I think Kenny Clark will take a step forward. Now, he's old, man. He's only 30, but, man, he's been in the league for 10 years, coming off an injury like that. And I know it sounds silly. Oh, he hurt his toe, boo-hoo. No, man, that stuff, that could happen again. It could, So
it probably will. I mean, how many times do you get your foot stepped on playing in the trenches? Like just in an average game, anything could make it, flare up again.
Yeah. So I feel pretty good about that matchup. I don't feel, like I said, if Ragnow was still there, I would be like, boys, it's going to be a tough year. But the fact that middle is kind of softened up a little bit. And Ed Madden, thank you for the info, buddy. He says Mahogany at the other guard is a second-year player with, I think, 180 snaps last year. 180 is pretty significant. Yeah. Pretty darn significant to have a 94.5. So maybe he's solid there. Maybe it's just that interior right side that we might have a shot at.
Do you think they're going to try and run like maybe off tackle kind of stuff or, outside zone stuff to kind of compensate for that? Or do you think they're going to kind of just play straight up?
I don't know, man. It's just so varied from year to year, Yeah. I think that when you go into a season, if you're talking specifically about Detroit's offense, right?
I'm saying it in this matchup against us, week one. Just looking at what we're looking at now. Yeah. Based on what we just discussed,
having a new OC, I would imagine they're not going to try to revamp anything. They'll probably try to refine what they did last year because if it ain't broke, don't fix it type thing until you have to fix it. Mm-hmm. I would think we're going to see something similar to what we've seen last year. I'm just going to tell you, man, if it hadn't been piss pouring the rain at Lambeau, I think that's a whole different ballgame. It kind of, to me, I remember Detroit coming out a little bit flat on offense. And by the time that we turned the ball over a couple times, it was like they were like, hey, you know what? Let's just let them lose it. Let's just play it conservative and let them lose it. That's how I remember that game, but I could be wrong.
I remember that game starting with a interception from very early on and us getting three points out of it. And that kind of set us back. And like you said, the elements did play a significant factor in that game for sure.
Yeah. Let's see your next comment. Greg Rice says, what do you think about trading Enagbare? I thought about it for a second, Greg, and I'm like, it does feel like we're a little bit deep at edge. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean we got a room full of superstars, but you got a bunch of guys at that second tier that's like around the same skill level. Now, Brenton Cox Jr., I think, is criminally underused, personally.
Yes.
I want to see him until other players prove otherwise. I want to see him get the majority of those reps outside of Rashawn Gary and LVN. I want to see him kind of be that next guy to step in and eat up those snaps. And he started to last year, if I remember correctly. His play time was, I want to say it ended up being higher than Enagbare by the end of the season. And he led the team in pressures, or pressure percentage, I should say, according to NFL Pro. So I want to see him get more reps. So when you think about that, and then I like what Ed Madden says here about what Greg Rice asked, I want to see Sorrell in season before I trade in Enagbare. To me, that's the answer, right? Yep. And if we were to pull up the depth chart real quick, let's just take a quick gander here. If we pull this up, Tim, think about how many edges you may keep, right? Rashawn Gary, Barron Sorrell, they're going to make the roster. Lucas Van Ness, and then you got Kingsley Enagbare, Colin Oliver, Brenton Cox Jr. That's 6. and I can't remember how many we broke camp with last year. But of those 6, based off those 6, do you feel comfortable trading Enigbare, or do you think it's something that, no, you need to hold on to him? Because, I mean, even at that position, injuries happen every year, you know?
It does, and you can never have too much depth, right? But you have to build a roster, and you've got to be balanced. I agree with Ed Madden's comment. I feel more comfortable asking or answering this question after maybe a preseason game or two, maybe getting through camp and seeing what we're really getting with Barron Sorrell, because I'm so through the moon excited about him. And I also wonder, when we talk about trading in Enigbare, what are we really putting on him as far as a trade value? Are we going to get a 6th or something? Or
I don't see a team giving a 6th.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
I mean, you look at his PFF grade, 56.8, right?
Right.
His sack total wasn't high. His pressure percentage wasn't high. I want to say it was under 10%. I can't imagine there's much trade value there, Tim, but let's pretend there was. Would you be willing to? We broke camp with 6 last year.
Yeah.
What it comes down to is, if you're willing to trade somebody like Kingsley Enigbare, then you're looking to carry Deslin Alexander, Aaron Mosby, one of those 2 players, as your 6th edge defender. I would rather have Kingsley Enigbare than Aaron Mosby, simply because Aaron Mosby can be protected on the practice squad. I don't think anybody's lining up to sign him off the practice squad. Kingsley Enigbare will probably get signed pretty quick. Draft compensation, just go snatch him up type thing. So when you run into an injury, it's nice to have Aaron Mosby kind of, your ace in the hole there. So my answer to that question, Ed, since we kind of broke it down, would be I would like to keep Enigbare, because, and again, I don't think any team's willing to give anything other than maybe a conditional 7th round pick, but I could be wrong. So that's kind of how I see that. Anything else you want to add to that question, Tim?
No, I think I agree. I would keep JJ.
Got it. All right. So there you go. Moving along here. So we covered defensive line and offensive line. Sam Laporta was the 10th highest graded tight end last year at a 73.6. All right. And then you look at matching up Sam Laporta with our linebackers is essentially what you're looking at, right? So Quay Walker finished the year with a 57.2. PFF were not kind to him at all. Edgerrin Cooper, however, the 5th highest graded linebacker in the entire league at an 85.7. You love to see that. So when you look at that matchup, this is the perfect conversation to go hand in hand with what we talked about a couple of nights ago when someone had asked me about which one, it was a motion question. Like when they motion the tight end over, who would you have, playing mock? Do they follow? It depends on the play call. When you face someone like the Detroit Lions and you got Sam Laporta, what I would personally like to see happen is you want Cooper shadowing him. And what that means is whether you're in zone or man, wherever he lines up, you follow him. And Quay's been in the defense long enough to know that he can adjust. And what I mean by that, if you both got two hook curls, and let's say the formation is lined up the way it is right here, where you're strong right with Laporta on the right side, when he motions over to the left, first of all, to start the play, you would have Cooper playing mock and Quay playing will. And when he motions over, even if you're in a zone defense and you got 2 hook curls in the middle, let Cooper follow him over to the left. That way, at the start of the play, if you do end up playing something with match principles, whether it's a cover 3 match, cover 2 match, or you want to run a Tampa 2 variation, and if Sam Laporta in this case motions over, he would be the number 3. You carry the 3 down the seam in a Tampa 2 call most of the time. If that's the approach, you've always got Cooper in a place where he's kind of locked up on Sam Laporta, even though you're not playing man coverage the majority of the time. That's how I would approach that. But then again, it depends on what kind of routes they run too. If they run a lot of vertical routes with Sam Laporta and not a lot of outs and things like that, then I'm okay with Quay covering the seam on Laporta. That's what he does well. Quay can flip his hips and cover the seam really well. Now, if it's something that they like to attack underneath with whip routes and stuff like that, I want Cooper on them. So it seems like 80% of the answers to the questions we got around how they'll use Sam Laporta, the answer is Cooper can handle that. Let's put Cooper on him type thing. So that's how I would approach that. Now, you got to keep in mind, man, they got Gibbs back there in the backfield. He was the 6th highest graded running back last year at a 90.1. So they're just a versatile offense, man. They can run the rock. They can throw to the running backs. They can pass the ball down the field, as we're going to get into the wide receivers and cornerback play as well. But in terms of the matchup with their offensive line against our defensive line, With Ragnow gone, I think it's closer to a push, but I would still give the edge to the Lions. And then when you look at the tight end and the running back versus our linebackers, it's pretty damn close to a push, but I'd probably give the edge to the Lions in that regard here early. Now, if Quay all of a sudden jumps up and plays like he did that 2 or 3 game stretch before he hurt his ankle, and he goes out there and grades out in the 70s or the 80s, and he's just playing lights out football, that can flip real easy. So let's hope we're getting the best version of Quay. Anything you want to – you're muted, Tim.
Speaking to your point about the versatility of Detroit's offense, like we cannot take that for granted because they can beat you 3 or 4 or 5 different ways if they want to, right? And so to your point, we need to be that on defense, and we need to have that versatility built into our scheme and our plan. And like you said, if that means being true to form in the modern NFL, which is, stack backers are interchangeable, or at least they should be, and they should have the skill sets to be able to do that. I think I love that approach, Clay. That's how I would attack it too. I'm looking forward to seeing Coop and Quay out there together on a consistent basis. I really am. I think they're going to be really good complements to each other out there, especially against a team like Detroit.
Yep. And then you got Jared Goff grading out a 78.8. He was the 16th highest graded quarterback in the league last year. Now, listen, early in the season, MVP candidate. Dude was playing lights out, right? So will Goff be the same quarterback without, our boy Radio? What'd you say?
I thought you meant without his center. That's another thing too. Ragnow hanging it up.
Yeah. I was talking about Ben Johnson.
Mr. Ready to go.
That's a perfect example. Like if you were to look at the offense and say, okay, from an operational standpoint, what are the most important aspects of an offense? You would say quarterback, center, right? Those are the 2 guys that touch the ball every single play, and your offensive coordinator. 2 of those 3 pieces are missing for the Lions this year.
Yeah.
You can't underestimate that, and it's kind of like the whole Dan Campbell conversation. He can really prove his worth and the amount of success he does or does not have without his 2 coordinators. If Jared Goff goes out up there, them completely flipping one of the best centers in the league to some no-name or a rookie in Ratledge, and he goes out and plays just as good as he ever has, my goodness. But a big reason for that is obviously these wide receivers. And from left to right here, they got Williams, a 74.5. Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot at an 89.3. And then, of course, Patrick on the right side there at a 66.8. Now, when you look at our DB matchup, take this with a grain of salt, okay? And I'll tell you why. Nixon, 64.1. Hobbs, 61.4. Bullard, a 54.2, but keep in mind the majority of that grade, as they've got him listed here as the 80th highest graded safety, the majority of that grade has come from the safety position. Now, when we broke down the individual grades of when he played slot corner and when he played safety, he played significantly better in the slot, but it's not like he matches up to an 89.3. So you would give the advantage to St. Brown, but thank God we don't play man coverage like most fans want us to play because we'd be getting our butts cooked.
Oh, yeah.
So when you look at that grade, yeah, Bullard's lining up over across from him, at least if this is the projected lineup. And we'll talk about what we think it's actually going to be here in a second. But if you got Bullard lining up across from him, listen, he's covering a hook curl or a curl flat. Or he may carry the 2 down the field and pass it off to the deep corner on the outside or the safety, depending on what the call is, whether you're playing the strong or the weak side rotation. Bullard, it's not like Bullard's going to be covering St. Brown man on man. There'll be man coverage calls, don't get me wrong. But I personally think, Tim, what this is actually going to be is Carrington Valentine, who is the highest graded returning corner for the Packers, will be over there in the Hobbs spot. I think Hobbs will be in the slot, and Keyshawn will be outside as well. So that number would actually get a little bit better. You would have Hobbs kick into the slot where he played some of his best football throughout his young career. You're getting a better version of Hobbs in the slot, and you're getting Carrington Valentine. You're basically flipping a 54.2 to like a darn near a 70 grade. I think his coverage grade was like a 71.3 or something last year. He had the best passer rating when targeted of all the cornerbacks on our entire team in the 2024 season as well. So I think it's going to be significantly better than this would suggest. The only thing that worries me, Tim, I kind of feel like this hits me every year, especially around training camp time. Bullard's a second-round pick. I don't think they're going to start him over Evan Williams. Right, Evan Williams, a 72.3, went out there and balled out, made the all-rookie team for, I think, PFF's all-rookie team, if I remember correctly. And I don't think he's going to start over Evan Williams. It worries me, though, that they keep Carrington on the bench because that's a 7th-round pick, and they got to march their precious 2nd-round pick out there on the field because they spent a 2nd-round pick on them. I hate that mindset. Hopefully they don't approach it that way. But then again, if they do, Tim, and Bullard goes out there and balls out like a 2nd-round pick, we're not going to complain.
Well, that's what I'm saying is I wonder if, like, because I would agree with you. Let me start by saying this. I agree. Hobbs goes to the slot. You put CV on the boundary with Keyshawn. That would be my preferred look here. However, if Javon Bullard, shows up, throughout the preseason and throughout camp and proves that his coverage skills have gotten better, or maybe there's an emphasis on, hey, we know you can lower the boom. We know you're great on the back end. You're great against the run fits. We can send you on that nickel blitz. But hey, man, we need your hands and your feet and your head. Like, let's go, man. You can't get torched in the slot in coverage. And if he takes that step, that's a great problem to have, because now we've really got the ability to kind of move guys around and plug and play. And like you said, injuries happen. So, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know how this season's going to play out. So I think it would be an awesome scenario if Bullard took a step and maybe that coverage grade improves a little bit. Because I agree with you. It would be a crime to start him at the safety position over Evan Williams after what we saw last year. That's just my opinion right now.
Yeah.
I believe in Evan Williams, and I'm with you, Clay. I don't like this whole, well, he was a 2nd-round pick, or man, I don't care where the hell you were drafted once you're in the NFL, man. This is where we're at now. We're trying to win a Lombardi this year. So we like Jacob always talks about best 5 on the line. We need our best 11 out there on defense, no matter what. I don't care what round you were drafted in.
Remove the picks.
Yep.
Could care less. Ed Madden says if we can get pressure up the middle on Goff, should lead to turnovers. If you get Goff off his spot, that's how you beat Goff. He's not a dude that's going to move around in the pocket, scramble to his left, throw across his body. If you get him off his spot, it's game on. Now, you can do that a number of different ways. We ran a lot of stunts last year, albeit sometimes with a touch spots. You're actually only rushing 3 as opposed to 4. But the scrapes and stuff with Coop, you can do that and create pressure up the middle. But the problem with that is for every guy you bring extra, you're -1 hat count on the backside. And we just talked about Coop kind of neutralizing Sam Laporta and taking that aspect of their game away. If you do that and you start firing Edger and Cooper on blitzes up the middle off these scrapes, twists, stunts, torch blitzes, things like that, now you're going to be -1 on the backside. Sam Laporta will probably start to eat across the middle. So you got to be careful with that stuff. And he didn't specifically say that. Ed didn't. I'm just kind of thinking out loud, how can you create pressure in the middle? Devontae White and Kenny Clark pinning their ears back and getting after him. You ain't got to worry about Goff scrambling too much, right?
So because what he doesn't have in scrambling ability, he makes up for in the ability to get rid of that football immediately if that pressure is coming. And if you're open on the back end, like you said, Clay, you're going to expose yourself. So we got to win in the trenches, I think, up the middle.
Yeah, I agree. Coach Lynn says, what if Bullard can play on the boundary? Coach, I
believe it when I see it.
Yeah, I mean, you guys remember leading up through the draft process, we were really high on Bullard. Like, I loved Bullard. Jacob turned us on to him, like, hey, y'all need to check out this kid from Georgia. We went and watched the tape and was like, holy cow, he's a real deal. We had him as our number 2 safety in the league, or in the draft. I'm sorry, number 2 safety in the draft. And when you turn on the tape, he could play the slot and he could play safety. And the thing that stood out to me, I even went on the record and said, his build, that's the one that Hafley was talking about when he said he's thick. I remember specifically saying, he reminds me of Nick Collins. Like when I watched Nick Collins, his rookie year out of Bethune-Cookman, I was there for his very first game. I was at Lambeau. He was the fastest guy on the field. There was no hesitation. He could read, recognize, diagnose, and attack the football. It was like, that kid gets it. When I watched Javon Bullard at Georgia and watched his tape, I'm like, this kind of reminds me of Nick, right? Yep. And then Sunday started, and I went, he don't remind me of Nick. It's funny how that changes when you come to the league. Now, he's got the athletic traits, I think, Coach, and that's probably what you're getting at. It's like, hey, he's fast enough, right? But just based off what I've seen so far, his strength to me is run defense and playing everything underneath. I kind of feel like if we got him out there on the outside, I say that, but then when you got an extra defender helping you out there, i.e. the out of bounds line, sometimes that fits players better. So you could be right, Coach. I just wouldn't put any money on it based off what I seen last year. Greg Rice says, I thought Bull struggled in coverage. That's how I seen it too, Greg, but I'm just a dumb redneck. Like that's based off the tape that I've seen. Is I felt like, okay, not a great coverage guy. He's good enough in the slot to cover, but his superpower is playing everything underneath, attacking the screen passes, the smoke screens, the swing passes, things like that. He's very aggressive underneath. If you could take the way he attacks the football and just embed that in Quay Walker, oh my God, you got a stud linebacker. Like there's no hesitation with Bull, but he would get cooked, especially on some of those over routes, right? And there was some matchy type calls from time to time. Not a whole lot, not as much as Joe Barry's defense, but there was a little match. So
I think it's important to remember too, like even if we were going to entertain that thought of putting him on the outside, he would have to outplay Nate Hobbs, CV, and Keyshawn to even jump into that level rotation, right? Or at least two out of those three guys, right? Because you'd probably move Hobbs to the slot then if you're going to put, Bullard on a boundary, but are you going to put Bullard on the outside over, Keyshawn or Valentine? That would be the question.
I'm really high on Valentine. And again, understand, guys, this could go either way for me too, because rookie year, I went cheeks. Last year, I was like, boy, he made me eat my words. This dude, I thought he balled out. I thought he played really, really good football. Really fundamentally sound. He could play. He could hang off the coverage and attack underneath, drift back. He could play a little bit of man, but man in zone. You talking about being able to play his zone while reading the quarterback's eyes and recognizing the passing concept that was going on around him, the route combinations that were attacking space around him. Both of his interceptions came from him breaking off of his concept and making a play on the ball, and not in a negative way. Sometimes you see that and go, boy, he completely left his zone uncovered. That could have been bad. No, he knew the quarterback's already moved on from that check. Let me find work, right? Yeah. There's nothing more frustrating than watching a defensive player, and it's easy for me to say sitting on my couch eating Cheetos, but when you see a defensive player that just kind of hangs out in space, and they're not really covering anybody.
Yeah. Covering grass. Yeah.
And, like Coach Haddad said on the show, we need to get him back on the show soon. He said, we always teach our players, blades of grass have never gained 1 yard. They've never scored 1 point. Players do. So, again, find work. It doesn't mean you completely neglect your zone, but if you're smart enough as a football player and you know what concept they're running, when your zone's clear, go looking for work. Don't just stand there. Don't just, kind of play patty cakes. So, the big X factor for me, though, Tim, is Xavier McKinney, man. 84.7. Dude was just an absolute ball hawk. I want to be very, very clear here, though, guys. I do not expect Xavier McKinney to have the level of success he did last year. I hope he does. Please hear me. Don't take this the wrong way. I hope he gets more interceptions next year. But I feel like that's going to take a slight step back, and hopefully us as an offense can protect the ball to kind of neutralize that offset. Or maybe Evan Williams now steps up and counters that, right? It's just typically the second year in a defense. You get a new defensive coordinator. If they're a good defensive coordinator, their defense will typically improve tremendously. And in the second year, they take a slight step back. Now, Hafley could be the exception to the rule. If that's the case, we're looking for a new DC next year because he's going to be a head coach somewhere probably.
Right.
But that's kind of how you see that. Now with Xavier McKinney, though, what he did last year, this is what we're talking about. When you're talking about building a defense, and I talk about tier 1 of importance, Rashawn Gary, edge defender, that's a tier 1 position. 3 tech is tier 1. We're lacking at a 66.4 with Devontae White. Inside linebacker / Mike, if you want to call it, the very interchangeable. I love that they changed this too, Tim, because when you go to the base defense, notice how they got Mike, Sam, Will, but in the nickel, it's just right inside, left inside, because they're very interchangeable in the nickel. I love that they changed that this year. But, again, if your 3 tech is stout, you got an edge defender opposite of him. What that does is it forces the offensive line to have to choose one to double team or take an extra receiver or target out of their route concept. So if you got tier 1, and then tier 2, there's your inside linebacker. Tier 2, there is your post safety, right? That's what we're talking about, is building the middle of the defense, right down the center of this defense, build it stout, because you've got 3 extra defenders on the outside called that out of bounds line, right? That's why teams struggle when they get inside the 10 to score touchdowns, because you've now got 3, really 4 extra defenders in that back line of the end zone. Yep. You know what I'm saying? So I get frustrated when I see defenders scraping the outside of that line. You know what I mean? Because it's like, what are you doing?
Use that line. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an extra defender back there. So, but anyway, in terms of the 11 personnel, I've still got to give the edge to the Lions right now, based off of how our defense stacks up against theirs. But with the loss of Ragnow, right, and the loss of Ben Johnson, I think it's a lot closer this year, Tim. A lot closer.
I agree. I mean, you think about what Matt did when he came in here and tried to kind of marry that McCarthy scheme to, to his scheme and what he was trying to do and make it comfortable for his quarterback. Similar scenario, Aaron had Josh Myers, and we all remember snap the freaking ball, Josh, and that whole scenario. So you look at the success that we were able to kind of have with Matt in those first couple of years, and then look at the scenario that Detroit's in. It's really similar. You've got a veteran quarterback, you've got a unproven / possibly a rookie moving to center, and you've got a new OC. So it might even be harder on Detroit. How do you have a new OC trying to maybe combine things like you were saying earlier? Don't reinvent the wheel. We might try to expand upon what worked for us last year. Well, everyone that was here last year is gone, including the center. So
right.
It's going to be pretty tough. It's going to be an uphill battle, but I would agree overall, man. I think Detroit may still have a slight edge, when you break down these matchups. That being said, 30 burger week 1, we're still getting the dub. Go Pack.
Love it. All right, moving on to 12 base versus where's it at? Right here, right? So this is our base defense, our base 4-3 defense against their 12 personnel. Okay, so the only thing that changes is we now plug in Wright, the tight end that was a 52.1, very similar to our tight end coming in grading out much lower, and then we add McDuffie to the lineup if he's the starter. Now here's the thing: who's going to be the starting linebacker? Tim, we kind of talked about this the other night. We won't go too in depth in it this time, but when you look at the linebacker position, you're going to have Quay and you're going to have Edgerrin Cooper. Who's that third linebacker? It's between Tyron Hopper, Isaiah McDuffie, Isaiah Simmons, and probably I think Colin Oliver is a decent chance he's going to be playing a little stack backer in camp. That's one of the first questions I want answered, Tim, when camp kicks off. Where's Colin Oliver playing at?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I got to tell you, honestly, stack backer, my gut is telling me we might have a different Isaiah as our third. It could be Isaiah Simmons. I mean, he seems reinvigorated. We have to remember that he's still a young guy. There's still plenty of good football left in that player. I think there's a chance that maybe Isaiah Simmons steps up and might snatch that role from, say, Isaiah McDuffie or even a Tyron Hopper.
Yeah, I would love to see Simmons take that role, but in a perfect world for me, it would be Tyron Hopper that wins it.
Oh, yeah.
And not just win it because he's, the younger draft pick. We spent a 3rd-round pick on him, but win it because he's the best player. Like, that would be absolutely awesome. But if it's Isaiah Simmons, so be it, right? If Colin Oliver, if they just work him into a few packages, and it kind of feels like the Colin Oliver being a little bit of that hybrid backer, kind of like a smaller Leo or a Viper type backer.
Yeah.
If he's going to play that role in Matt and Jeff Hafley's offense, maybe they're going to bend it in that direction. Maybe they're going to do. I mean, listen, we ran a lot of fire zone blitzes last year. When I say fire zone, it wasn't technically a blitz; it was fire zone principle, but we still only brung 4 on the rush. Right.
Right.
This year, you get a team in a 3rd and 12 situation, or even a 3rd and 8. Get Colin Oliver out there and go, hey, I want you playing over the center in a stack backer role, and then right before the ball is snapped, I want you to jump in the outside shoulder of that guard and work a twist with Gary, whatever, right? Work a little stunt play. So
that could be a problem for not only Detroit but any offensive line in the NFL if that starts working.
And in the past, you would get concerned that, man, if you did that, does that make you vulnerable against the run? It can, but to me, Hafley, he seems like he's got his T's crossed and his I's dotted. When we ran twists and stunts last year, you would think, okay, as much as we did that, whether we blitzed or not, it's still a twist and still a stunt, even though you're bringing just 4. We still finished with the 2nd best run defense in the league. So you feel really comfortable that, hey, they're not going to burn you here if they take that approach. Now, they're showing Montgomery in here in the backfield now, the 10th highest graded running back. Tim, that's a 2-headed monster for the Lions, man.
Yeah.
Between Gibbs and Montgomery, that's arguably the best backfield in the league. And I feel really, really good about our backfield, especially with even with the emergence of Marshawn Lloyd, and I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised at how good of a football player he is if he stays healthy this year. But having Josh Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson, I put our backfield up with just about anybody.
Me too.
But when I look at the lines, well, that's when you got two backs that have elite grades like that, and they've had significant snaps. That's a different ball.
Certainly, probably the best tandem back, right? The best tandem running backs, probably. I look at us and like you're right. If Marshawn Lloyd takes the step that we know he's capable of taking, and Emmanuel Wilson continues to improve, and Josh Jacobs continues to be the beast that he is, by committee, we belong in that conversation too. I feel like we have just as good a running back room as anybody else in the NFL. Honestly, I really do.
Yeah. Greg Rice says, weren't we a low blitz team? We were. So when you hear us talk about fire zone blitzes and things like that, it's only a blitz if 5 rushers come after the quarterback. Okay. So what we would do last year is run a lot of stunts. We'd run a lot of torch blitzes, things like that, torch looks. So essentially what you've got is with a fire zone blitz, we may fire the nickel, and that looks like a fire zone blitz, right? Okay, you got the 4 defensive linemen and the nickel blitzing. But we would drop the edge defender on the opposite side out. When you hear us say Leo or you hear us say Viper, that's the type of hybrid player that is. We were doing that with Enigbare a lot last year. Like, that's the other thing, too. His pressure percentage went down, but we asked him to drop into coverage several times. So what you'll do is you'll come out here with the illusion of, hey, we're bringing 4, right? And then he would do a quick jab step, drop into a curl flat, or even most of the time his was a hook curl, and we would rotate the safety down on the curl flat. So when you drop, 55 Enigbare back in that hook curl, we would fire the nickel off, okay? Or we would have times that the nickel would show blitz, right? And then he would drop into coverage, fire zone blitz principle. And then you would have 55 drop out as well, and we would bring Cooper on a blitz, right? So when I say blitz, it's a rush. It's not really a blitz. So when you ask, weren't we a low blitz team? We were, because the majority of the time we were had one of the lowest numbers of more than 4 rushers going after the quarterback. Okay, so it's fire zone blitz principles while only bringing 4. There was times we had the defensive tackle dropping into coverage too. You know what I mean? And in that case, you would fire the nickel, you would let the edge blitz, and then you would have the D tackle engage and then drop back and kind of play a little shallow curl flat. And that's typically with teams that like to leak little Texas routes out of the backfield, or they like to, maybe run shallow crosses, things like that. You're taking the safety valve away, right? So Pointer Doug says Simmons as a spy or too tall. I think he could spy. I think he could. If you're genuinely asking, do I think he could? I mean, he's got the athleticism. The problem with the spy, and we did a lot of touch spy, Tim, if you remember, when we watched the tape, Chalk Talk last year, we would do a lot of touch spy with the backer. Remember?
Quay. Yeah, Quay was a master at that.
They would do a double A-gap mug, right, where they're both in the A-gap, and he would smack the center, and then he would drop back and play that shallow spy, especially against teams that have scrambling quarterbacks, right? So I think Simmons could do that. I do. But I don't know.
So could Coop. Coop could probably play the spy too in a pinch. Yep.
Listen, I'm trying not to overreact, Tim, but what I've seen out of Cooper last year, man.
I know.
I have not seen that in a linebacker in Green Bay. Some people say, what about Clay Matthews? Clay Matthews was typically a pass rusher, right?
Right. He was an edge before. It was cool.
And when Clay moved to middle linebacker, he played good. I was surprised. I was like, damn, he picked that up pretty quick. Nothing like what Cooper played. I mean, Cooper. Yeah, and again, I know this is going to be this would be a perfect one to clip and say, hey, look at this overreaction, idiot. There's not many linebackers that I have watched and thought, man, that kind of reminds me of Lawrence Taylor. Like Fred Warner. Fred Warner is he's probably going to be a Hall of Fame linebacker.
Yeah.
But I didn't get that with Fred Warner. He's kind of a gap destroyer and plays excellent zone. With Cooper, it was just like, turn that son of a gun loose. You almost, like the way they used to use Lawrence Taylor with the Giants, he had freedom to do whatever he wanted to do on the field. I'm not suggesting we do that with Cooper, but the impact that LT had, again, maybe it's just because I've never seen it in Green Bay that I'm overreacting. But when I see Cooper, it was just like, man, this dude, he reminds me of that. He does. And they let LT do what he wanted to do. Like, I'll never forget that one of my favorite stories. We'll get ready to wrap up here. But one of my favorite stories was Bill Belichick said that Lawrence Taylor came into the meeting late, right? Came into a defensive meeting late. And afterwards, he went to Belichick, or Belichick went to Bill Parcells and said, Bill, Lawrence Taylor been sleeping in the meetings. He came in late today. He said, we had to start the meeting without him. And Bill said, never start the meeting without him. Like, he was like, I don't care that he's late. Like, you started the meeting without LT? No, we don't do that. You wait on him. That's how important.
And then they would come to find out that LT, he had a grasp of everything.
Oh, dude, he was.
They thought, oh man, he's late. He didn't show up. He's not. He knew exactly what was going on in that defense.
Yeah. Yep. Ed Madden says, I haven't had anyone like Coop since maybe Nick Barnett. I watched Nick Barnett. I watched his entire career, Ed. It's not even close.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And again, it's only 1
year. Who makes Nick Barnett look like Devondre Campbell?
It's only 1 year. It's only 1 year.
Yeah.
But, man. Yeah. He
it's hard not to be excited, right? Like
it is, because
there's nothing wrong with being excited, but I'm with you. You don't want to get ahead of your skis, right?
I just try to be realistic. And hopefully y'all, like, when you tune in to the show and we break down tape, it's, like we do a post-game show. There's a lot of emotion, and I tell the guys, hey, if it's a loss, 15-minute cool off. We're not going to get in here and act like a bunch of drunken idiots like other people do and scream, fire this guy, fire that guy. He sucks. He's a bum. I'm not doing that on this channel. I'm not going to do it. And then when things go really, really good, I want it to be high, high energy, a lot of fun. Hey, this is just, let's crack open a cold one and enjoy the win type thing. But also you want to look at hey, we got to curb the enthusiasm a little bit. Let's don't turn into a bunch of fanboys, right? Like, let's talk about what I always say, Tim, right? If you see it, you got to say it. What happened? Why did it happen? That's our goal when we're breaking down tape and kind of, I don't know, reviewing everything. But watching Cooper, man, I kept getting pissed because it's like, why ain't he on the field? Get him on the freaking field. Like, until he proves he can't do it, get him on the freaking field. What are we doing? Yep. And I know we started the season a little banged up, and that's the thing. He was healthy in the regular season, but he got banged up in camp. And I think there was some hesitation there, like, I don't know if he's ready. I don't care. Like, get him on the football field. And he's one of those players that we talked about was an ascending player coming into the league. He was playing his best football as last year in college, and he was getting better as the year went on. So I'll tell you, a player that was doing that was Matthew Golden.
I was just going to say, that's
his entire college.
My mind, man, just like Matt Golden, right?
Houston, under recruited, goes to Houston, and then Texas came calling, sent him an NIL deal. Hey, let's get his butt over here in Texas. He goes to Texas, and it's Isaiah Bond was supposed to be the featured wide receiver. He passes Isaiah Bond up on the depth chart, and he's still ascending. He may hit the ground running at the NFL level, man. That's going to be a lot of fun to see too. So, golly, Greg Rice says, could you imagine Lawrence Taylor with Reggie White? Oh, my God.
Holy cow.
Imagine this defense that we're looking at right here, Tim. And imagine Kenny Clark. And I know Reggie played a lot on the edge and everything, but imagine Kenny Clark being Reggie White, and imagine Enagbare being LT. Now, I know LT played linebacker, but they would blitz him a lot, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine having Kenny at 3 tech and LT rushing off the opposite edge?
Man.
There'd be more than Joe Theismann's leg getting broke. I promise you that. They'd have warrants for those guys' arrest throughout the league. They'd be hurting so many people. So if you're hearing my voice and you're maybe a younger fan and you're like, man, I keep hearing about Lawrence Taylor, but I've never seen it. Go to YouTube right now. Cut this stupid show off. Go over on YouTube. You're already on YouTube. Search at the top of the bar there and put Lawrence Taylor highlights and just sit back and enjoy the show. And try to get a mocked up one too, just to see how crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the best.
Especially LT, man.
Yeah. All right, Tim, anything else, man? Ready to wrap this thing up?
No, good to be back, man. Hope everybody had a good weekend, and happy to be back talking ball. Training camp is almost here, guys. Almost.
Right around the corner. So we'll continue this little series. Tomorrow, we're going to dive into how the Packers match up against the Vikings. We'll do the same type of thing. Now, we'll probably repeat a little bit of what we talked about when we're talking about the Packers, but the matchups are totally different, and we'll kind of look at how the Vikings roster has changed this year as well. I know I said I was going to do this. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Our buddy Aaron Rodgers had brung this up, and he actually sent it to me. So let me see if I can get it on the screen for you guys and gals, because this is really
that was really good at it.
Yeah, it's pretty clean, man. I ain't gonna lie, dude. So what he did was he put did somebody else? No, he did this. He definitely did this.
I'm pretty sure that was his. Yeah.
So you guys remember, and again, this was our buddy our Aaron Rodgers, not the Aaron Rodgers, with the super chat. Thank you for that, pal. This is what we were talking about that he put up on Twitter. So, guys, go give this a retweet. Go follow him too, at AMRogers98. He said, I see the vision. You see the old Sports Illustrated cover there? That is so sick, Dan. That goes so hard, man.
That was classic right there. I mean, look at that room.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah,
you and I could have had a pretty good season with that receiver room.
Kidding me, dude? I would have thrown for 5,000 yards. So for those who can't see the picture here, obviously listening on the podcast, it's that picture of Aaron Rodgers sitting on his helmet in the middle of the picture. Next to him is Randall Cobb on one side, Greg Jennings on the other. Then up top, you got Jordy Nelson, Donald Driver, James Jones, and Jermichael Finley. Like, solid. And of course, the other picture that he put together, Aaron Rodgers put together. And it's Jordan and Jaden Reed in the front, and then in the back you've got, of course, Romeo Dobbs. You got
Matthew Bird. I love it.
Tucker Kraft. Tucker Kraft was already off to a faster start than Jermichael Finley was. So for anybody who goes, oh, he's no Jermichael Finley, get your popcorn ready. I think Tucker Kraft's gonna blow up. And then of course Savion, just a damn man, dude. Look how big that dude is. Like, he just broad shoulders. You know what I mean? When Christian Watson gets back too. Tim, if he's somehow ready before October, I'm going to lose my mind, dude.
And let's talk about him too, man. He bulked up a little bit too. Scoot does not look like the wiry dude he looked like, the last couple seasons, man. I think he's really he's put some muscle on here during this whole rehab process.
Yeah, for sure.
Which of course is going to help you avoid injury. So I'm looking forward to seeing him back sooner than later.
Yeah. 2-0 for this says Tucker Kraft's no Richard Rodgers. Hey, we all joke about Richard Rodgers, and I know Aaron was very, very excited to have another Cal Bear in-house, and I think he had like the highest catch percentage of all the tight ends coming in the draft that year. But boy, oh boy, that Hail Mary in Motown, that was worth the Richard Rodgers era for sure. What an awesome play that was. So, all right, guys, that's it. We're out of here. If y'all would, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. If you're new here, feel free to tune back in. We try to go live daily, depending on, what time of year it is and what content we have. Also, if you want to support the show, the best way to do so is just join our Patreon community, patreon.com/PackerFan Total Access. $3 is all it costs. And again, it's just a way to support the show. We get you extra content. All this information that I showed tonight, the matchup between the Packers and the Lions, you can find in our Patreon community, along with all kinds of other content, extra content in there. Scan a QR code in the upper right, that'll send you to the same place there as well. Again, patreon.com/PackerFan Total Access. We'll be back tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Central Time for PTA Live. Everybody have